All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is Kennard Levi Brown speaking. I'm your host for the Merciful Servants of God Biblical Instructional Program. And sorry I wasn't available last week. I My schedule got thrown off. I had stuff I had to do, and um, I did let them know. But what I'm going to do next time, if I have to do this again, is simply design a graphic where it states that the show is canceled for today, but we will be available next week. So again, I apologize for that, but things happen, and unfortunately, I had to tend to those other matters. So, but hopefully, I'll be able to do this each and every week. And I know that there are some people anyway that like to hear what I have to say. So. Um, and I appreciate those who do actually do want to listen to me. I really do appreciate it very much. And it's like I said, as long as I'm alive, and which I expect to hopefully stay around another 20 or 30 years, then I will continue to do this until I can't do it anymore. So I'm hoping that Messiah comes back in 20 or 30 years from now. I really hope that that happens, because that would be a fantastic event for everyone, for Yodhe to come back in the form of his son representing him, and so forth. That would be awesome. And so what we're going to do is go over a topic that is certainly misunderstood by most Christians today, or I shouldn't say most, but a good portion of Christians don't understand about the temple. And if you want further information on the temple, my friend Rico Cortez, certainly that's his specialty. He talks about the temple, and also Joseph Good, who's his teacher, in reference to the temple. And I just know it in a general sense about the temple, and so forth. But if you want to get real specific, or there's other sources too. You can go to the templeinstitute.org or .com, and they actually have video teachings of the temple. If you need any other reference material in reference to that, I certainly can refer you to that. But the temple is very important to understand. And it's important to understand because the temple, the physical temple on the earth, alludes to God's house in heaven. All right. And there's certain symbolic things that we'll go over that in the next few weeks, because we have 8 chapters to go over in the book of Ezekiel before I get to the book of Jeremiah and all the rest of the prophetic books. And so I really gear this program toward getting more into prophecy, because we need to. The Torah readings of the traditional Torah readings, both the 1 year and 3 year cycle, involves the Torah, or the prophet section. So prophecy is important to God, is future history, and it should be important to us. And we need to pay attention to it. And on this program, I dwell on it, and I am dwelling on it when I actually have my Shabbat services on Facebook. And eventually, I'm going to probably transfer that to YouTube, so I can reach a wider audience on YouTube. But right now, I'm going to do it on Facebook as far as the Shabbat Bible studies. And so I have a lot of projects in the future. I have to write 3 more ebooks. And hopefully I'm going to get the second one, which is about the basic doctrines of Yodhe or God. Hopefully I can get that done in the next 2 or 3 months. I'm going to build a website for that, have teaching videos on that too, on my own YouTube channel. And so I'll let you know when I get that done. Then I'm also going to write a book or ebook on conflict resolution. It's something that's badly needed. And last but not least, an ebook on how to prepare yourself for marriage. And also the ebook is for those who already are in a marriage, how to improve your marriage. So those are the 3 additional ebooks, in addition to the one that I've already have published for last year. And this I'm updating it constantly. That's the thing about ebooks that I love. If Yode Vahe gives me more information, or if there's some errors in the ebook, I'm human. We all make mistakes. Then I can quickly adjust it, and you can't do that if you go ahead and print a book. So that's the reason why I use ebooks. Is in real time, basically. If I need to add some information or God gives me more understanding, then I can quickly do that. Or if I need to retract something, spelling errors or any errors of understanding, I can revise it. So that's what I like about that. So anyway, what we're going to do, as we always do on this program, we're going to briefly go over what's going on in the news based on the admonition in Luke chapter 21, verse 34 to 36. Watch and pray that you may be able to escape all these things. That means two things. Number one, we need to watch our spiritual condition. No matter what the world is doing, if we're not right with God, then when you die, that's going to be bad news. So we need to always make sure that we're walking with God, because some of us are not going to make it into the tribulation, ladies and gentlemen. And the good news for those who don't make it in the tribulation, he states this. And before I even go to Isaiah 57, I'm going to quote another scripture that most people don't understand. And, I will get to you seeing the Bible on the screen once I get to the main study today. But in Romans chapter 8, it states, let's begin in verse 4, that the righteousness of the Torah, oh, and by the way, I'm also doing my podcast again. That's a much needed tool that I need to use now, because there's quite a few people that still like to listen to things too. And so I have both options now. If you want to see me and hear me, you can do that. If you just want to hear me, if you're the kind of learner that just are audio learners, because there's still quite a few of those out there in the world, then I provide the podcast. And also the podcast is really to the world. I mean, I address topics and issues of the world, and I do it in 15 minutes. I used to have these long, drawn out 1 hour Bible studies that would either put someone to sleep or they would just become disinterested. Our minds today, unfortunately, we have a short attention span. And so me knowing that, and God inspired me now, and then my wife helped me out to just lower it, shrink it to 15 minutes. So if you guys want short, succinct teachings, go ahead and listen to my podcast. I have over 300 podcasts on a wide variety of topics. So feel free to go, and you can download those Bible studies. You can share those Bible studies. And how do you access it? Well, you go to Stitcher, STITCHER.com, Stitcher.com, and then you can type in Merciful Servants of God, and then you can actually get the app, the Stitcher app, on your iPhone or on your Android. And you could actually choose to be notified when my next podcast will be available. And so, I have one thing I do provide plenty of teaching. I mean, you can get all kinds of teaching from me. And so feel free to take advantage of it, because I don't charge, unlike others. And I'm not knocking other ministries that do that, but I hope one day that they realize that they need to offer everything for free. I don't see anywhere where Messiah charged for his literature or his teaching. So we shouldn't do that either. All right, so as ministers, but that's another topic. Anyway, Romans 8, verse 4, that the righteousness of the Torah, a law, might be fulfilled in us, who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. I just was talking to someone that didn't understand that we're supposed to do righteousness, but it's not really our righteousness, it's God's righteousness working in us, or his Spirit working in us, so that we can do pure and true righteousness. And verse 5, for they that are after the flesh do mind the things of the flesh, but they that are of the Spirit, the things of the Spirit. Verse 6, for the carnally minded or fleshly or sensually minded person is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. And what is peace? Most people don't know what that is. In Psalm 119, 165, it says, those who love thy Torah will not be offended. And so, who love the peace. Let me turn there. Psalm 119. 165. And it states, great shalom, or great peace, have they which love thy Torah, and nothing shall offend them. Or offend means for something to cause, or someone to cause you to fall. And so if you want peace, keep the whole Torah, all of his instructions, his way of life. That's how you have peace. So let me go back to Romans chapter 8. Romans chapter 8. And what is peace? Peace, shalom, is having all your needs taken care of. It's not just, oh, the United States and Russia is not throwing bombs at each other. No, true peace is where you're content and you know all your needs are taken care of, which unfortunately many people in the world don't have that kind of peace. So anyway, in verse 7, Romans, and this is a key verse, because the carnal mind is enmity against Yodevahe, for it is not subject to the Torah of God, neither indeed can be. And so if someone is against any of God's instructions, it don't make a difference which one they are, Sabbath, adultery, whatever, then it states that that mind is hostile toward God and cannot submit to his instructions. All right. And so in verse 8, so then that are in the flesh cannot please God. And these people that are against keeping any of the commandments certainly do not have God's spirit in them. Verse 9, but you are not in the flesh, but in the spirit, if so be that the spirit of Yodevahi dwells in you. Now, if any man have not the spirit of Messiah, which means there's people that do not have his spirit in them, it's none of his. So to be able to be a part of his body, you have to have that spirit dwelling in you. And I tell you that most people do not, they think they do, but they do not have God's spirit dwelling in them. And verse 10, and if Christ, which means there's going to be people who don't have Christ in them. So if Christ be in you, the body is dead because of sin, but the spirit is life because of righteousness. What is righteousness? Deuteronomy 6, verse 25. Righteousness is all the commandments of God. Commandments in Hebrew is mitzvot. That's the plural. Singular is mitzvah. All right. All right. So the commandments is equivalent to righteousness. Psalm 119, 172 tells you that. Verse 11, but if the spirit of him, and if again, meaning there's going to be people who don't have his spirit, but if the spirit of him that raised up Yeshua from the dead dwell in you, it has to be in you, not outside or around you, in you. He that raised up Messiah from the dead shall quicken your mortal bodies. Why is he quickening our mortal bodies? Because we're going to be changed, as 1 Corinthians chapter 15 states, from a mortal state, a temporal state, into an immortal state. Now, I covered this in my free ebook, How God Calls You to Keep His Instructions. And you can get this free ebook. Everything is free. Not asking for money here. www.howgodcalls.com. That's www.howgodcalls.com. Please get that book. You will learn something new from that book, ladies and gentlemen. Most of you will anyway. By that spirit that dwells in you. And so that having the spirit, it is true that you're once saved, always saved, if you don't walk away from this. And it's a possibility that you can do that. There's several scriptures that prove that. But let me just show you one simple scripture. And first, or it should be simple to understand, 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 14. But the spirit of the master departed from Shaul, or King Saul, and an evil spirit from the Lord troubled him. Now, why did that happen? 1 Samuel chapter 15. 1 Samuel chapter 15. 1 Samuel chapter 15. And this is very foundational for people to understand that the spirit can leave you. And you can be the cause of that, the spirit leaving you. 1 Samuel 15, verse 22. And Samuel said, the prophet Samuel, have the master as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices. Now, let's stop for a minute. Some people will say, well, all you need to do is give, and you're making it God's kingdom. Well, that's true. That's true. But what he says here, well, that's partially true. Let me correct myself. And Samuel said, the Lord has as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the master. Behold, to obey is better than what's sacrifice? It's a form of giving. It's a form of giving. And to hearken than the fat of rams. So God wants you to obey him. That's even above giving to the poor or doing anything. He wants you to obey him. Now, part of his commandments is to give to the poor. So that's one of his commandments of the many. Okay. Verse 23, for rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness is as iniquity and idolatry. Because thou hast rejected the word of the master, and he equates rejecting the word of the master with dancing with the devil. That's what I like to call it. It's like the sin of witchcraft or divination that comes from the devil, and stubbornness, and as iniquity and idolatry. So when you do that, you drive Yodevahi's presence from you and his spirit, which is his mind, his force, his essence. All right. And he has rejected thee from being king. And this is a prophecy, because what does he say in Revelation? Revelation chapter 1. What is our destiny? Well, Revelation 1 verse 6 says, and he has made us kings and priests, Kohani and kings, unto Yodevahi and his father. To him be glory and dominion forever and ever. And so we are going to rule with him, his bride, the first fruits, the Bikurim of salvation is going to be his bride. And we're going to rule with him. I covered this in my book of Revelation studies. If you want to have free access to that, simply become my friend. Just type in on the Facebook page, on my Facebook page, on your Facebook page, or your Facebook account, Kennard, Kennard, middle initial Levi Brown. And then I'll put you into my Merciful Servants of God group. There's no charge to be on my group. And you'll be able to have access to all my teachings. I have quite a few. They're building up to be quite a few video teachings, as well as podcasts and all kinds of information on that group page. All right, so let's take a look here at what's going on in the news here, and then we'll get into the Bible study of the Millennial Temple. Why is there a Millennial Temple? Why does the Bible appear to reveal that there will be sacrifices in the future when Messiah, I thought that Messiah put an end to sacrifices? Well, we're going to get into all that. So anyway, watch.org, www.watch.org, the top news, Iran, Rouhani rejects top diplomat Zarif's resignation. So remember, Iran is Persia. I am going to be creating, I'm in the process of creating a prophecy chart that I hope would be the best prophecy chart ever created. And for that to happen, I have to have Yodevahi to help me, but that's my goal. And I'm going to put down everything that I know about prophecy as far as understanding the order of events on there. And so be praying that I get that completed soon. But anyway, Iran's President Hassan Rouhani on Tuesday rejected the resignation of his foreign minister Javad Zarif, according to the presidential spokesperson. Zarif did not give a reason when he announced his intention to quit on the social media platform Instagram. I'm sure many of you know Instagram and how effective it could be or is on Monday night. So anyway, moving ahead, Trump lands in Vietnam for Kim Jong-un's summit. So here we go again with the monkey business with North Korea. President Trump landed Tuesday in Vietnam for his crucial summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, the president's second meeting as part of a bold push to rein in Pyongyang's nuclear ambitions. I quote, looking forward to a very productive summit, end of quote tweet. Trump tweeted on Monday before boarding Air Force One. And so some more news. Here we go with our crazy government. Democrats blocked Born Alive bill to provide medical care to infants who survive failed abortions. And that's ridiculous. I'm not going to even go further than that. Anybody that's against preserving a child's life has the spirit of murder in them, ladies and gentlemen. And it just shows you how deprived our nation is becoming. February 25th, Assad meets Iran's Khomeini for the first time since Syria war began. Now, the Syria war began in 2011. And so Syrian President Bashar Assad has made an unannounced trip to Iran, which is modern-day Persia, where he met with the supreme leader and other top officials to discuss the planned U.S. troop withdrawal and Turkey's efforts to set up a buffer zone in northern Syria. Now, whenever I read this, folks, you need to be turning to Isaiah chapter 17. This is prophecy that's being fulfilled right before your eyes. We don't know exactly when Damascus will be totally destroyed, as the prophecy in Isaiah chapter 17 reveals, but it appears that it's slowly happening. Assad met with Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and President Hassan Rouhani on a rare trip abroad, his first to Iran since the civil war broke out in 2011. He has made 2 other trips since then, both to Russia. Tehran has given the Syrian government billions of dollars in aid and sent Iran-backed fighters to battle alongside his forces, assistance that, along with the Russian air power, has helped him turn the side in Assad's favor. And so we have news about Venezuela. Iranian Foreign Minister Zarif announced resignation. We already talked about that. Many people think there's going to be some kind of chip in your hand and all that based on the Bible prophecies about the beast, but that may be. But what we need to understand about Revelation chapter 13 is certainly going to involve Sunday worship. Okay, Sunday worship and perhaps also a chip being implanted. That's a possibility as well. So we got to look at both. I know the Sunday, that certainly was going to have something to do with everything, because that's one of the things, one of the major breaks from the Jewish people was Christians looking at Sunday as being the day when God's presence is there. It's not, Sunday is not an appointed time according to the scriptures, all right, unless it's Shavuot, which that's another Bible study, but it's not an appointed time. It's not when God's presence is, that's not the time when God is commanding you to fellowship with other people and fellowship with him spiritually. It's Saturday, and then all the other feast days, all right? But anyway, I'll get into that here a little more detail after I get through with this. A man volunteered to have a chip inserted under his skin live on stage at an international trade show this week. And so, yeah, AI, artificial intelligence, and it certainly can have something to do. Matter of fact, I would think, I would say it will have something to do with the way things are going. But let's not forget about the sign, just like the Sabbath is a sign that you are covenanting with Yodevahe. I believe Sunday is a sign that you've broken that covenant and you're covenanting with an unholy being called the devil. Okay, so that may be quite hard for people to accept, but I can prove it scripturally and I can prove it through history. And for those who think I'm talking crazy, what you need to do is study how Christians broke off from keeping the Sabbath. It happened as early as the 2nd century. Look up Ignatius. He's one of the church fathers. He broke away from keeping the Sabbath, and other church fathers did that as well. So you need to do your study on that. And it's a quite simple study. You can actually go to the encyclopedia, the Catholic Encyclopedia. It does list primary sources as well as secondary sources, so that you can find out for yourself why the Catholic Church felt that it was okay to stop worshiping God on Saturday or assembling on Saturday and to assemble on Sunday. It's all there for anyone. And then also the Sabbath, sabbathtruth.com, sabbathtruth.com, sabbathtruth.com. Maybe Nan Chat could type that in there, one of my assistants, and you could actually go to that website at sabbathtruth.com, and they have comprehensive videos, and they have primary source, secondary source documents for you to review to see how and why the Sabbath day was done away with and Sunday was the focus. It's all there. You have to study your history. And so anyway, this article states a man volunteered to have a chip inserted under his skin live on stage at a trade fair in Barcelona on Monday, and another man who had already undergone the procedure showed off how he could make a payment with it using his smartphone. Ooh boy, Edgar Pond said he decided to have the radio frequency identification, that's the RFID, that's the acronym of the radio frequency identification chip, implanted because it contained credentials to open the door to his house. I quote, "It is super for me, very useful because I have an automatic house," end of quote, he said, adding he was further motivated by the fact he could, I quote, "withdraw it very easily, simply making a little cut and pressing it end of quote. So this is certainly going to play a role in end time prophecies, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so let's go to the economiccollapseblog.com quickly here. And I do this, ladies and gentlemen. We got to look, these are the end times. If you don't understand that, I need to pray to God that you do understand it. I mean, these are the end times, and things are really going crazy, folks. And we need to pay attention to what's going on in the news. And if you're not willing to do that, then when these things happen, you're going to be caught off guard. And Yeshua warned us in Luke chapter 21 that we should not be caught off guard. Luke chapter 21, verse 36. He says, "Watch ye therefore, and pray always, that you may be accounted worthy to escape all that." You can escape this through your death before the tribulation, or you can be protected miraculously during the tribulation and the day of the Lord. To escape all these things that shall come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man. And so that's a commandment. We need to, we can't have our head in the sand. And I know a lot of people don't listen to me because they're afraid of prophecy. They don't want to hear about it. But hopefully those who are listening to me, you're not afraid of prophecy. Anyway, the economiccollapseblog.com, he states here, "Are you prepared for the coming economic collapse in the next Great Depression?" That is the question. And he states here, "As the perfect storm approaches, most Americans are parting instead of preparing." Yes, that's according to the Bible prophecies. "I can't think of a time when Americans were more apathetic about getting prepared, and yet this is exactly the time when the urgency to get prepared should be at the highest." I totally agree, 1,000,000,000%. Earlier today, my wife Miranda and I were discussing the fact that every single element of the perfect storm is coming together. I agree. Just as we had anticipated. One by one, the pieces are falling into place. I agree again. And I share the most recent things that my research. And that's why I refer you guys to this. I don't have the time to do the research he's doing. And he does some verifiable research on this website. It's a very valuable website for you to help you understand that these prophecies that have been in the Bible for thousands of years are starting to be fulfilled. So one by one, the pieces are all falling into place, and I share the most recent things that my research has uncovered with you, with all of you on a daily basis. Unfortunately, most Americans are absolutely convinced that there is no reason to get prepared for hard times because everything is going to be just great. In America today, most people either believe that the future is going to be totally wonderful or that the future will be totally wonderful once we get rid of Trump, which is delusional. Because I added the delusional. Because so many of us have adopted one of these false narratives. Most Americans are partying instead of preparing, and that is going to mean big trouble when things really start going haywire. And that's what Yeshua meant too in Luke chapter 17. It says, "As in the days of Noah, so shall the coming day of the Son of Man come." Let's look at that here in Luke chapter 17. Luke chapter 17. Verse 26, "And as in the days of Noah, so also shall it be in the days of the Son of Man." They did eat, they drank, they married wives, they were given in marriage. So everybody's partying and marrying and just carrying on their lives as they normally would until the day that Noah entered into the ark and the flood came and destroyed them all. And then also he compares the days of Lot. Likewise, as it was in the days of Lot, they did eat, they drank, they brought, they sowed, they planted and built. But the same day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. And in verse 30 of Luke 17, "Even thus shall it be in the day when the Son of Man is revealed." And so, ladies and gentlemen, we got to stop all this complacency. These are the end times. Get ready. Get ready. He has me and other people. It's not too many, but he does have some people. I'm one of them, warning you through the scriptures that you must do the following. 2 Peter 3, verse 1. "This second epistle, beloved, I now write unto you in both which I stir up your pure minds by way of remembrance." Verse 2, "That you may be mindful of the words which were spoken by the holy prophets." And says the Old Testament, the Tanakh, is important, but also the New Testament has equal weight. "And of the commandment of the apostles of the Master, Yeshua Messiah." Verse 3, "Knowing this first, that there shall come in the Charit Hayamim, the days before the coming of the Messiah, scoffers." And this is what he's talking about here in this article. People are scoffing and walking in their own lusts and saying, "Where is the promise of his coming? For since the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they were from the beginning of the creation." In verse 5 of 2 Peter chapter 3, For this they willingly are ignorant of, that by the word of God the heavens were of old, and the earth standing out of the water and in the water, whereby the world that then was, being overflowed with water, perished. What did Messiah say? As in the days of Noah, so shall it be. People, a lot of people are going to be caught off guard because they have this complacent attitude. Verse 7, but the heavens and the earth, which are now by the same word, are kept in store, reserved unto the fire. He also said that these end times, the 21st century, is similar to the days of Lot. What happened in the days of Lot? What happened to Sodom and Gomorrah? All right. And he says, reserved unto fire against the day of judgment and perdition of ungodly men. All right. And so, folks, we can't have this attitude. Matter of fact, that's one of the characteristics of the Charit Hayaman, that people will doubt that he's coming back. And I'm going to do a Bible study to show you what are the 7 characteristics of the Charit Hayaman, or the days before the coming of the Messiah. And so here's another article, shocking intel. It is being alleged that weapons and ammunition are being moved into position for the coming war in Venezuela. So he's thinking that a war could come in Venezuela, and it could. So we need to pay attention to that. This is interesting. The average time until a great civilization collapses is 336 years, and the U.S. is now 242 years old. So if you do some simple arithmetic here, 336 years, let me take a look here, minus 242 is 94 years. So he's saying that based on this, I don't think we have 94 years. But that's good that he's saying that that's the average time a great civilization collapses is 336 years. In the U.S., it's now 242 years old. And then he has another article here. Is China's social credit system a preview of the coming beast system? And so we'll see. We'll see. And I don't have time to read the rest of these articles, but you can at your leisure by going to the economic, is the THE economiccollapseblog.com, the economiccollapseblog.com. Okay, so let's, in the remaining time we have here, let's get into the Bible study about, and this might be a 2-part, well, actually it's going to be more than 2-parters, but about the Millennial Temple. And like I said, most people, let me get this book here, most people don't have a clue. Let me show you this book. This is a book that I think I read most of it. It's called The Messiah's Coming Temple. It's by John W. Schmidt and J. Carl Landley. And I know one of the authors, he actually knows the people that own or manage the Temple Institute in Jerusalem. And he has pictures of what the Bible reveals that the what I believe is going to be the 4th temple, or a repaired 3rd temple, which leads to the 4th temple. And this is a very interesting book. I suggest you get it and read it. I don't agree with his views about the rapture. He thinks it's before the tribulation. But as far as the knowledge about the temple, it appears to be accurate. All right, so I'm going to refer to this. If not today, certainly as I go through this, I'll refer to certain things in the book, certain scriptures that he turns me to. And let me go to my share screen option here so that I can do that, and then we'll get going here. Okay, so share my screen here. Okay, so you should be able to see the Bible here, and we'll get going with this study. All right, so first of all, I don't know how many, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 of these, but we got to understand, first of all, that the temple is very important to Yod-Heh-Vah-Heh. Leviticus, and it's linked with Moedim, or appointed time worship. Leviticus chapter 19, Leviticus chapter 19. I'm turning there if this program works here. What's going on? I don't know why it's slowing down. Okay. Leviticus 19, verse 30 says right here, you shall keep my Shabbats and reverence my sanctuary. I am the master. Now, when I quote this in another version, reason why I use the King James version a lot, folks, is the version that most people are familiar with. But when I'm speaking to someone who's strong in the Hebrew roots background or a Jew, then I use these translations. I use the Complete Jewish Bible and the Scriptures. Anyway, in the Complete Jewish Bible, it says, keep my Shabbats and revere my sanctuary. I am Adonai. And then in the Scriptures version, which is another good one, it actually has the Yod, Vahe, Yod, Vahe. There we go. And Leviticus 19, verse 30, guard my Shabbats and reverence my set apart. And that, I like that. That's the deeper Hebrew meaning of sanctuary, is a set apart, it's a place. It's a place, okay? So, and Moed means meeting place. Moedim is appointed time or appointed meeting, all right? And so the Sabbaths and the appointed times are times when you meet with Yodeh-Vahe. Sunday is not one of those appointed times. It's not the time when God says, hey, I want to meet with you. Although you can worship God any day, I'm talking about meeting with him, a specific time to meet with him. That's what the Sabbaths are and the appointed times are. Okay, so let's understand that. And so anyway, this is interesting. He links the Shabbats and also the Moedim are type of Shabbats. They're similar. You don't work on those days and so forth, the feast days. So guard my Shabbats and reverence my set apart place. And so you do get some people in the Hebrew roots movement, they get arrogant, some of them, and they say, well, I don't need to do fellowship with anybody. I just need to stay in my home all by myself and be alone with the Father. No, did Yeshua do that? Let's look at what he did, ladies and gentlemen, in Luke chapter 4. And see, another key to understanding the Bible is understanding that Yeshua or Jesus is the ultimate example of how a human being should live. And so whatever he did, we do. It sounds simple, right? But we make it complicated, right? Luke 4, verse 16 in the King James Version. And he came to Nazareth where he had been brought up, and as his custom was, he went into the synagogue. That's where we get our modern day churches today. On the Sabbath, well, that's where we got church from the Jewish synagogue, on a Shabbat day, and stood up to read. Okay, so Messiah wasn't alone with the Father on the Sabbath. He fellowshiped with people, and he may have been alone with the Father after he fellowshiped or before, but he made it a habit, as his custom was, to go into the synagogue. And in the synagogue, there's other people, so he wasn't hiding from other people, and he was fellowshipping with those people on Shabbat day, one of his appointed times, and stood up to read. Okay, so if he did it, we do it. And in 1 John chapter 2, verses 1 to 6, my little children, these things write I unto you, that you sin not. So we're not supposed to sin. And if any man sin, we have an advocate with the Father, Yeshua Messiah, the righteous, or the Zaddik. Okay, he's the righteous one. Verse 2, and he is the propitiation or covering for our sins, and not for ours only, but also for the sins of the entire world. Verse 3, and hereby we do know him if we keep his mitzvot, or his commandments. Verse 4, whenever you see keep his commandments, talking about all of them, all the ones we can keep. Verse 4, he that says, I know him and keepeth not his commandments is a liar, and the truth, which means the spirit, is not in him. You don't have the spirit of truth in you. If you don't keep any of it, don't have any desire to keep any of his commandments. Verse 5, but whosoever keepeth his word, in him verily is the love of God perfected. So you have the love of God in you, you have his spirit in you. Hereby know we that we are in him, and he in us, of course. Verse 6, he that says he abides in him ought himself also to walk even as he walked. One of the things he did walk to is a synagogue. Now, if you don't have a synagogue in your area, go to a church of people that are doing the best they can to keep all the commandments of Yodeh-Vahe, including the Shabbat. The Shabbat is a sign that God is dwelling with you, that God is saving you through his spirit. And Sunday is the opposite sign that he's not doing that. And God's presence is not in Sunday, ladies and gentlemen. That is a lie if you believe that. And so anyway, let's go back. All right, so let's get into this issue with the temple here. Okay, some foundational principles. Now, doesn't Hebrews 13, was it 12? I think I'm trying to remember which scripture it was. I think it's Hebrews chapter 12. It talks about sacrifice. Let me just put it up in here. Get this out the way here. Sacrifice. No, it's in the book of Hebrews. Here we go. All right, so Hebrews 10 verse 12 says, but this man, after he had offered one sacrifice for sins forever, sat down on the right hand of Yod-Heh-Vah, from henceforth expecting till his enemies he made his footstool. Now, he was a he became the Passover offering, okay? And so he was a burnt offering, all right? Verse 14, for by one offering he had perfected for them that are sanctified. And then right here, this is the scripture that throws people off tremendously. Hebrews 10 verse 18. Now, where remission of these is, there is no more offering for sin. So right away, when people read this, they say, well, there's no need for any sacrifices anymore. Well, the reason why there is a need for sacrifices, ladies and gentlemen, let me explain. You have to understand what the purpose of the sacrifice. Many people think the purpose of the sacrifices was to take away all sins like Messiah. No, it was not. And so let me just show you here. All right. Let me show you here in Hebrews chapter 9, verse 11. But Messiah being one, and a high priest of good things to come, by a greater and more perfect tabernacle, not made with hands, that is to say, of this building. Remember, it started out with a tabernacle and then it became a temple. Verse 12, neither by the blood of goats and calves, but by his own blood, he entered in once into the holy place, having obtained eternal redemption for us. We can't obtain eternal redemption. He had to do that for us. But to enter that kingdom, we have to obey his commandments. Okay, we can't save ourselves by keeping the commandments, but we have to keep the commandments to enter into that door. He opened the door. None of us can open the door by keeping the commandments, but to enter that door, we have to keep the commandments. Verse 13, for if the blood of bulls, this is quite simple. When you're in someone else's house, you have to go by their rules, right? Well, God is no different. If you want to enter into his kingdom, into his house, which the temple represents, then we have to abide by the house or the temple rules, right? So anyway, Hebrews 9 verse 13, for if the blood of bulls and goats and the ashes of a heifer sprinkling the unclean sanctify him to the purifying of the flesh. So this is important to understand. This is some foundational understanding, and I'm trying to break it down as simple as I can. That this is all the sacrifices did, and this is what they will always do under the temporal plane. There's two universes or dimensions. That you have a temporal dimension and you have a spiritual dimension. Under the temporal dimension, to appear before Yod-Heh-Vah, we have to purify our flesh because God is clean and immaculate, and we have to clean ourselves to be able to be in his presence. And so the blood of bulls and goats and the ashes of a heifer sprinkling the unclean sanctify up to the purifying of the flesh. Verse 14, how much more shall the blood of Messiah, who through the eternal spirit offered himself without spot to God, purge your conscience from dead works to serve the living God? And many people, because they don't know any better, say, oh, the dead works is keeping the Sabbath and holy days. No, the dead works means your refusal to want to keep all of his commandments. That's what dead works means, okay, to serve the living God. All right, so let's take a look at Hebrews chapter 10, verse 1. For the Torah, having a shadow of good things to come and not the very image of those things, can never, with those sacrifices which they offered year by year, continually make the comers therefore unto perfect. Okay, so let's understand. Fact number one, the sacrifices were offered to purify the flesh only, not the mind, not the spirit. Number two, the fleshy sacrifices can never make someone complete or perfect. Verse 2. So Hebrews 10, verse 2, for then would they not have ceased to be offered, because that the worshippers once purged should have no more conscience of sins. And that's the problem. We have to have the memory of sins wiped away from our minds. And the only way that can happen is through the spirit of Messiah, the spirit of Yodevah, not sacrifices. Verse 3, but in those sacrifices there is remembrance again made of sins every year. Verse 4, for it is not possible that the blood of bulls and goats should take away sin. So you have it here. So you should have a foundational understanding of this. Number one, the blood of bulls and goats did not take away sins. What it did is purified the body to appear, purified a human being to appear before Yodevah. That's what the sacrifices did. All right. And that's the only thing it ever did do. Now, it did point to the ultimate sacrifice of Messiah, but those sacrifices cannot make them perfect. So if you can picture in your mind a dichotomy here. So on the left side, you have the temporal universe or dimension, and you have these sacrifices, and you have a physical temple. And for someone to appear before Yodevah, they had to sacrifice, they had to give a sacrifice so that their flesh could be cleansed so they can appear before Yodevah. All right? And so that's what the sacrifices were for. Now, I know you say, well, Kennard, what about the scripture you just read, that there's no need for sacrifices anymore? Well, that's true. But it's talking about Yeshua's ultimate sacrifice. Yeshua's ultimate sacrifice is no longer needed. Okay, that's what that's talking about. It's not saying that sacrifices won't be allowed anymore or can't be allowed, because case in point, when the Messiah died, the apostles were still doing sacrifices. And you say, they were? Yes, they were. Acts chapter 2, let's go there. Acts chapter 2, the day of Shavuot, okay? And suddenly there came a sound from heaven. And so right here, as you can see, they were keeping Shavuot. And that place that they were gathered was the temple, and there were dwelling at Jerusalem Jews, devout men of every nation, okay? And they were there at the Temple Mount. And why were they at the Temple Mount? Well, let's take a look at Numbers. Let's take a look at Numbers. You got to understand the feast days. You got to understand the Moedim. If you don't, you're not going to understand the Bible. Okay, so you have all these offerings. You have Passover offerings, the Feast of Weeks or Shavuot offerings, okay? And so let's take a look here. And so right here, also in the day of first fruits, when you bring a new meat offering into the master, after your weeks be out, you shall have a holy convocation. Convocation means a holy or set apart assembly at a place. You shall do no more servile work, but you shall offer the usual work. You shall offer the burnt offering for a sweet savor unto the Lord, 2 young bullocks, 1 ram, 7 lambs of the first year, and their meat offering, or that should be translated grain offering, of flour mingled with oil, 3/10 deals unto a bullock, 2/10 deals unto 1 ram. And so anyway, these are all the offerings that were done. All the offerings that were done, okay, during first fruits of Shavuot. Now, in Leviticus chapter 23, Leviticus chapter 23. And then this is the Feast of Weeks. And, I actually like Shavuot better. Let me see if it's, yeah. Tomorrow after the Shabbat. And so it says right here, and this is in the Complete Jewish Bible, and from the tomorrow after Shabbat, from the day you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, you shall count for yourself 7 completed Shabbats, and on the morrow after the 7th Sabbath, you shall count 50 days, then you shall bring a new grain offering too. So this is what the apostles did. They brought a grain offering, and bring from your dwellings for a wave offering of 2 loaves of bread at 2/10 of the ephah of fine flour, They are baked with leaven, first fruits to Yodevahe. And besides the bread, you shall bring 7 lambs. Here we go. And so I don't need to read the rest of that. They did that in the first century. And so sacrifices were still being offered after the death of Messiah. And so he did not die to terminate the sacrifices, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, that should be total proof that wasn't the case. And let me just read this last one, and we'll pick up next week with this. This is going to be probably a longer Bible study than I thought. But, and let me read this in the King James. Malachi 3, verse 1. Behold, I will send my messenger, and he shall prepare the way before me and the master. Whom you seek shall suddenly come to his temple, which proves there has to be a temple for him to come to. Even the messenger of the covenant, whom ye delight in, behold, he shall come, says the master of hosts. Verse 2. But who may abide in the day of his coming, and who shall stand when he appeareth? Well, when he came the first time, people were standing. So this is certainly talking about his second coming. For he is like a refiner's fire and like fuller's soap. And he shall sit as a refiner and purifier of silver. And he shall purify the sons of Levi and purge them as gold and silver. That happened partially in the first century, but it's really going to happen in a mighty way when he returns the second time. That they may offer unto him, here we go, the reestablishment of the sacrifices and offering, which is outlined in detail in Ezekiel 40:2-48, that they may offer unto the master an offering in righteousness. Verse 4, then shall the offering of Yehuda and Jerusalem be present or pleasant unto the master, as in the days of old, as in the former years. And people say, oh, the sacrifices are done away with. They do not know what they're talking about. And I'm trying to say it as nicely as I can. And so we're going to end with that, ladies and gentlemen. I will pick up next week and go into further detail with this. And then we'll I just wanted to provide some foundational understanding of why the Bible reveals that sacrifices will be certainly active and alive during the end times, and of course, leading on to the millennium. And so I'm going to go into further detail about that next week. And so may Yah bless and keep you. And Yah willing, I will be available to you next week. Shalom. Peace.